What is up? What is up? What is up? What is up? We are Off Ball Takes coming to you live from the East Coast. It's about 12:41 for us. And we just got done watching some wild games. Well, one wild game. That was Lakers Warriors. And we just want to shout out everybody who's in here right now. It's much love. We appreciate you guys coming through. We're hoping to make this thing a regular through the playoffs. So, stay tuned for our next live stream. But once again, thank you for coming through to this one. It's going to be a blast. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got some playoff stuff. Obviously, that's the main thing. And then we've got some other stuff around the league to talk about as well. This is shaping up to be a really interesting, I think, round two, especially with this Lakers-Warriors game. So, I guess to kick it off, the Lakers came away with the victory in this one, 117-112. Wild game, in my opinion. Anthony Davis, 30 points, Braun, 22 and 11 rebounds. AD also had 23 rebounds. Sorry, forgot to add that. So monster game from AD, and that's what you want to see if you're a Laker fan. I think you need to see AD playing at his prime. I think you can live with LeBron, maybe not being as, dominant as he used to be. Back in his super duper prime, but it's just a good sign that AD is hooping like you would want him to. And then go down the list. Austin Reeves, 10 points, 5 rebounds. D'Lo, 19 points. I think that's a solid outing offensively. Defensively, everyone knows he's a liability, but offensively, I think that's great. Vanderbilt, 8 points, 6 rebounds. Great defensive plays. You love to see it. Schroeder, 19 points. I think that's a decent showing from him as well. That's definitely something you want. Troy Brown Jr. finally made a shot, so that's great news for Lakers fans. And Rui had 6 points. So, they didn't get too deep, which I think is the right call as the coach, especially in the second round. You don't want to get deep unless you really have the personnel for this. But, just my thoughts on the Lakers. I have them winning this series. I think, it's all going to come down to AD. I think AD can be dominant. He can potentially, show Golden State that, they got away with one, against Sabonis. I think that's what the philosophy here is. But, that's just my opinion. And, I'm really curious to see what, AD's going to do in the meantime. I don't know. I just feel like he's going to have some legacy games here. But that's just my opinion. Same thing with Poole. The best performance they're going to get from Dennis. Yeah.
That's performances you're going to get from those two guys.
Yeah, I can agree with that. We'll talk about it in a second. I mean, I guess I'll let you handle the Warriors because, with the Lakers. But, obviously you have a lot to say about the Lakers, too, because you're a Laker fan. So I'll just give you the floor.
Yeah, I mean, even though I did pick the Warriors to win the series, because of how wide open the playoffs are. I think that there's a pretty clear path for the Lakers to win the series. We both talked about it on the previous podcast. Anthony Davis is, pretty much the key for what the Lakers can do defensively. As you mentioned, he's not the same as Domantas Sabonis. He's a terrific rim protector, one of the best defensive bigs in the league, one of the best defensive players in the league. So everything that he does completely changes what the Lakers can do. His rebounding, like you said, he had 23 boards.
Yeah.
Right. They kind of kept Kevon Looney, at bay. I mean, he had 16 rebounds, right? Or I guess 23 rebounds as well.
Yeah.
But obviously with AD matching that, right, he's not going to get out rebounded necessarily by Looney.
Right.
Like you said with LeBron, obviously, he's still dealing with the foot injury. But the thing is that even though, again, not a great offensive performance, he did make some key buckets and also some great defensive plays, which, again, if he's not going to give you the same offensively, but he's going to give you, really good defense, I think that's a good sign for the Lakers. I mean, that's pretty much their key to win this series is winning with defense, getting to the basket, right? I mean, the free throw differential, the Lakers had 29 and the Warriors only had 6. We knew this was going to be a thing going into the series, right? The Lakers are one of the best teams at getting to the free throw line. And Golden State is one of the worst at getting to the free throw line. I believe they're dead last in free throw attempts per game. So, and that makes sense. They took 53 threes. And again, to their credit, they made 21 threes, which is an incredible amount. I think that's a record for them for the most part in the playoffs. And the Lakers only made 6. So this was a game where I thought if the Lakers were going to win the series, they were going to have to steal game 1, right? With the rest that they got because the Warriors got to a game 7. You needed to win this. And then for the Warriors, right, Stephen Curry, 27, but on 24 shots, right, 5 turnovers. So, he was fine, right? Obviously, you weren't going to get a 50-point game performance. Clay was fine to start the game, but down the stretch, he kind of cooled off. Wiggins was, okay. His 3-point shot just still isn't there.
Right.
Draymond obviously, can do his thing on defense, but 3 for 9 from the field. Michael Green gave him okay minutes. I mean, he hit a couple threes, but again, couldn't match up against AD. Not much from anyone else other than Poole. Jamal says in the chat, not gonna lie, LeBron lucky Poole missed because he was about to sell. Yeah, he missed the free
True.
throw.
Yeah.
And missed the right shot. But that's the shot that you want if you're the Lakers. I mean, like, if you're gonna lose a game, right, or go into OT, right? I mean, Poole, even though he can hit shots, he's not as good of a shooter as
He's
Steph.
a loose cannon.
He had a decent offensive game, but again, that's a horrible shot to take down the stretch of the game, and that's obviously a concern, right? Because again, the Lakers, they can get to the basket, for the most part, whenever they want. I mean, obviously, 46% from the field, but part of that was because their 3-point shot just couldn't knock any down. 6 of 25. They were up by double digits late in the fourth, and then just literally could not score for the last 4 or 5 minutes. It got kind of scary. But again, they were able to close it out on the defensive end. So that's the pathway to win this series, right? And again, they needed to win one of these 2 games on the road. Golden State's been great at home all year. Poole could have stepped into it. I didn't think it was going to go in. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Like, I know he could have stepped into it, but I'm like, I didn't think he. I didn't think.
Yeah, JP. I mean, honestly, bro, recently I feel like he's had some ego issues, and I don't want to attack the guy, but you even said it while we were watching it. You were like, "You're not Curry, dude. Like, just calm down, and you need to know your limitations." And we know he can hit that shot from range, but honestly, you want the ball in either Curry or Clay's hands in that situation. I understand he had the hot hand, but still, I think the Lakers, they can live with that kind of shot, but I don't know. This is just a funny ending to me because I feel like, the Warriors definitely could have won this game. It just comes down to execution. And I think the Lakers kind of got lucky with this one, but, they did come out with the win, obviously, with 80's monster performance.
Yeah. They did have a double-digit lead. They just couldn't score down the stretch. I mean, just okay. I mean, it's kind of hard to look at the camera and the chat at the same time.
Dude, don't worry about him. I'm really looking at you because I'm trying to have an intimate conversation. I'm not going to look to my right. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah. But Poole was also an X factor for the Warriors because we know he really struggled against the Kings. He had some truly awful performances. This was probably his best playoff performance this postseason, I think. I think he had maybe like 1 or 2 decent games against the Kings, but for the most part, it was all pretty bad. Had 5 fouls, so that's not a great thing. He's going to get attacked defensively because he's not a great defender. So that's kind of the key here. So, I mean, overall, fatigue, I think, kind of over the course of the game did feel like a factor. Yeah, AR 15 and 2 big threes. Yeah. That was also another X factor was Austin Reeves. Only 10 points, 3 assists, 5 boards. But yeah, he hit some timely shots. And in the starting 5, he's the guy, him and Vanderbilt are kind of the guys that take turns guarding, Steph and Clay, because, you don't want D'Lo on either of those guys. I mean, I guess you could have D'Lo as a chaser.
Right.
But it felt like at times they kind of had him on Wiggins at times, which, I guess, again, like they don't really use Wiggins as like a shot creator. They, he's more of like a, he could spot up for open threes or, maybe attack mismatches by, posting up or like late game shot clock offense. But they run their offense through Steph, Draymond, Looney, and guys like that. So that's kind of the other thing with Golden State is like, other than Poole, again, you got nothing from your bench.
Right.
Right. Whereas with the Lakers, I mean, you got 19 from Schroeder, right? This was his best game. This was kind of a series where, like I said, he's another X factor where he wasn't great offensively against the Grizzlies, even though he was good defensively. You need him to have some big scoring games, right? And on a night where, again, you didn't get as much offensively from Reeves, you just needed one more guy, right? LeBron wasn't as efficient. So again, you had D'Lo, you had AD, LeBron, right? And then again, shout out to Vanderbilt. He made some big defensive plays.
Yeah.
They had to take him out, down the stretch because they just couldn't get any offense going. And that's, kind of the issue with him in terms of his offense is, again, he's a guy that they leave open. But in his minutes, if he can be out there and play good defense and if they can run some good sets where they kind of involve him, as like a screener so you don't have to have him take a ton of spot up shots, right? You can win those minutes again, and then the other thing is the non AD minutes, right? I
Yeah.
mean, AD played 44 minutes, so it wasn't a lot, right? It
Right.
wasn't a lot of non AD minutes, but when Wenyon was out there, right? I mean, he didn't score, but he had a couple rebounds, right? And he's an active guy in terms of a roller. I mean, that's what you need, right? I mean, so this. And again, Ham made adjustments over the course of the last series. Like you kind of mentioned, he trimmed down the rotation, right? Because before he was playing like 10, 11 guys, right?
Yeah.
Beasley was playing, Troy Brown Jr. was playing, um, and then, I mean, I guess I'm trying to think. I guess but Troy Brown Jr. did play in this series, and this was
Yeah.
kind of a guy that probably needed to play, just because defensively on the boards. I mean, like you said, he hit one shot. I mean, he was 1 for 10 against the Grizzlies, so it
Yeah.
was gonna have to go in at some point.
Yeah, he's a
But yeah,
little interesting, and that's coming from a Washington fan. So,
but
I get it. But in terms of the guys who did have an impact, plus minus doesn't tell you the whole story. But I believe Vanderbilt was like +8, so that tells you outside of scoring, he was a factor in this game, for sure. So I mean, I just love it. So this is what you want to see as a Laker fan, I think.
yeah, exactly. And then Rui Hachimura, this was a series where I didn't necessarily think he was going to play a whole lot, just
Right.
because, kind of hard to have him, out there in terms of trying to chase, Clay around. Because again, the issue is that if you have LeBron, AD, and Rui out there, right, one of those guys is probably going to have to guard Clay. You don't want LeBron to do it. You don't want AD to do it.
Right.
And no, you probably don't want Rui to do it just because,
Right.
he's probably not quick enough to navigate screens, right? If Clay was handling the ball, maybe, right? But off of screens, it's not great. Get Malik in there. Malik Beasley just hasn't been effective. That's kind of why he's not playing. I mean, because his issue is, he can knock down threes at times, but I mean the problem is if he's not hitting his shots, he's not really going to give you anything else. He doesn't really defend, doesn't really rebound, doesn't really pass. They gave him a chance in the Memphis series, but he just couldn't knock down shots. And
Yeah.
again, there may be a time at a point where maybe they put him back in there, but right now I think the rotation, what they had was fine, and I probably wouldn't change it. Who you guys got winning Golden State and Lakers series? Um, Going into the series, I thought the Warriors were probably going to win the series because I just wasn't confident in the Lakers' ability to win against the Warriors, on the road because Golden State's been so good on the road. As a Laker fan, I'm pretty terrified of Steph and Clay from three. And I know Poole really struggled against the Kings, but I know he's not that bad. He's going to have a couple of games where he plays really well. He played fine tonight. Um, but again, if you're the Lakers, you need to win this game. You needed to win one of the first two games, preferably game one. So this is a good start, right? You had the Lakers winning the series, so you can kind of,
Yeah.
explain your factors there.
So yeah, so I had the Lakers winning this one, and it's mainly due to AD. I think AD's the big X factor because nobody's going to be able to put a body on him. I mean, Draymond's going to be able to hinder him, but not take him out of the game completely. And the Lakers are no Sacramento. I think they're a little bit tougher, definitely better defensively. So I think this is more of a challenge for the Warriors, and the Warriors just went through a whole 7-game series, so fatigue is a thing as well. So I'm just a little bit more confident in this Lakers squad as well because I feel like the Lakers are pretty good at home too, but the Warriors are as well. So I think these are both really good home teams, but I think the Lakers are better than the Warriors on the road as well. My only concern is if this series comes down to a Game 7 series, I think then the Warriors are probably gonna have the edge over the Lakers. But as of right now, and even prior to tonight's game, I had the Lakers winning this series, and I'm going to probably stand on that just due to the fact that it's Anthony Davis. I think he's a great force on the offensive and defensive end. So, I just feel like he's a matchup nightmare for them. But the Lakers defense is how are they going to limit Curry? I think that's their number one problem because, like tonight, you can live with Jordan Poole, being a little inconsistent, spotty, but also, going off for 20 points. Same with Clay as well. I think you can live with that, but, you can't have Curry exploding for 30, 40. That's when you're in the danger zone for me. So I think the Lakers are a team that's competent and, they're well equipped enough to, have that scenario happen where, you can hinder Curry a little bit, but, also come away with the win. But I think the point differentials are going to be very small. So, it's not going to be like any blowout games. I don't foresee that happening, just due to the fact that, the Lakers are such a good defensive team. So, that's the main thing, is the defense. So I'm taking the Lakers on that one.
And this was why going into the playoffs, this was why the Lakers were my dark horse in the Western Conference.
Right.
Because trade deadline, they've had one of the best records in the Western Conference, one of the best defenses. They got better players, than what they had going into the season. And AD had been having a great year, right, keeping them afloat. While LeBron was out. And so, like you said, he's the key. He's the key. And if he continues to play like that, yeah, the Lakers probably are going to win the series because, again, if they have no answer for Anthony Davis, I mean, there's not really a whole lot you can do. I mean, and again, he played almost the whole game.
Yeah.
I mean, he played 44 minutes. And again, with the coaching staff, that was another concern that I had, and going into the playoffs and the continuity. But the coaching staff, I think, since the early part of the Memphis series, has done a pretty good job. I think they've done a good job at making adjustments, making counters, early on, as opposed to not really noticing when to make changes until really late.
Right.
Because it's one thing to make changes, midway through a game, as opposed to 3 games into the series, right? So they've been doing that. And again, some of these games are going to come down to games like this, right, where it's a single possession game. Can you get stops? I do trust the Lakers to be able to get stops, but because again, like you said, even though Jordan Poole's a really good offensive player, you'll live with that shot. If he makes it, then you kind of go with that. What team you guys think will want Dylan Brooks?
You want to take that first?
Yeah, so we'll get
Okay.
into it. Yeah, so obviously, I guess to kind of go off topic a little bit, but obviously we got to talk to the guys in the chat.
Yeah.
Um, so obviously everybody knows Shams Charania reported earlier today that Dylan Brooks reportedly has 0% chance of returning to the Memphis Grizzlies. Not really something I expected to be reported this early,
Yeah.
but on our previous podcast, I talked about in terms of their offseason plans. I wasn't sure if Dylan Brooks was going to come back because he was a free agent. I'm not going to say that they lost the series because of his comments, but it was a combination of that and the poor play that he had over the course of the series. And it just feels like his time in Memphis was probably done. In terms
Right.
of what team would want him, I mean, my guess is that probably a team that misses out on a bunch of free agents, and then they're probably like, well, we got to spend our money on somebody, so why not spend it on Dylan Brooks?
Yeah.
So maybe a team like a Houston. I know they have cap space, so if they don't get anybody, maybe he goes there. I'm trying to think of another team that has cap space. I guess the Spurs, but I don't think he's a Spurs guy.
Do the Hornets have cap space?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think.
Okay. That's
And
what I
they're
thought.
probably gonna have to pay what's his name,
LaMelo.
Bridges.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah, because I think he's probably gonna return next season. So
Yeah. They're just waiting for
yeah,
that situation to blow over.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I guess because the thing is he's not gonna make a ton of money. He's probably a mid-level exception guy, so he could
Right.
probably get 8-10 million.
I wouldn't mind him
somewhat.
in Houston, if I'm
Yeah.
being
So I
honest.
mean, I just don't know, how many teams, because again, there's not a ton of teams I think with cap, and there's not a lot of great free agents. So I don't think he's going to be necessarily one of the first guys to get signed unless somebody overpays, which I would think that wouldn't happen because I don't think he's worth 20 plus million.
Doesn't have
But
any value right now.
yeah, I do think he cost himself. That was just again beyond giving the Lakers motivation. I mean that you can't cost yourself in free agency like
No.
that. So yeah, I think a team like a Houston, I think Sacramento may have. I don't
Oof.
know if they're going to have a ton of cap, but
Do you
they're
think
going
they
to
would
have.
buy in on that? I don't think they would.
I don't think they would, but I'm just throwing out teams because I
I
don't
know.
think a contender is going to sign him
No.
necessarily.
It's got to be a squad that's not good. There's
Yeah,
no
so,
way. I don't foresee them. I don't foresee any real contending team signing him. There's no shot. I just don't think that's plausible. But that's just me.
I just don't see a contending team. It's kind of like what we talked about with the Trae Young thing, where it's a contending team is probably comfortable with who they have at point guard. And then a bad team, well, I mean, if he wants out of Atlanta, I mean, like you go to a situation that's not really much better, it's not going to help you. You guys think the Grizzlies will be better or worse without him?
No
I think
difference. I don't think there's going
yeah,
to be a difference.
I think it kind of depends on who they replace him with. At the trade deadline, I was kind of hoping that they would go all in on
OG.
OG.
Exactly. I
They
don't get
didn't do
that.
it.
Could have easily got him.
Yeah, I mean, they ended up not doing it. And maybe Toronto was just kind of like, squeamish on it. But I mean, if they don't replace him with anybody, they're probably going to be like relatively the same. Because I mean, like, you know, even without Ja, like they've been like a really good defensive team. I know Dylan Brooks is a really good defender. It just kind of comes down to like who they replace him with. Like if they
Yeah.
just let him walk and they just kind of like elevate somebody who's, a young guy who's on the team, right? We'll have to see. It just depends on how much better that guy gets. Like I don't know, a guy like a Zaire Williams, right? Zaire Williams, like if
Yeah.
he's just
Zaire
elevated,
Williams. Yeah.
yeah, Zaire Williams, if he's elevated to the starting lineup next year, right? Well, maybe he'll make them better, maybe he'll make them worse. It just kind of depends. So
Yeah. And he's such
I
a
don't know.
young guy with a lot of upside, but there's so many question marks on his career because he's really good in high school, didn't really do all too much in college, but yeah, for me, I just think Dylan Brooks, he's okay. He's not a bad player by any means, in my opinion. Just had a bad series, talked way, out of the side of his mouth. I think that was the biggest issue. But yeah, I've always been a fan of his game, like from when he was, coming out of Oregon. So I don't know. The trash talk was a little bit excessive for me, but I don't think he's gonna make them any better, to be honest, because they weren't really playing that well in this series anyway. So, or in the Lakers series.
So I guess if we can move on, I guess to
Yeah.
the game from earlier.
Oh yeah.
Heat Knicks, kind of an ugly game. I mean, 111-105 New York. Miami was up for a good chunk of the game, most of the game. I guess we should first mention Jimmy Butler was out.
Mm-hmm.
Surprised me a little bit, but at the same time, his injury did look kind of bad. And I guess they were probably hoping that, maybe they could like sneakily win this game without him. And they were
Right.
close, but just down the stretch, they just couldn't knock down shots. And then they had other guys just go down due to injury. It looked like Caleb Martin grabbed his back at the end of the game. Max Strus got hurt at one point in the game. It was a really gutsy performance by Miami. It was just they just didn't have enough to win. Brunson and Randall were questionable, but they ended up playing. They
Yeah.
both played really well.
Very well.
Um,
Yeah.
if we look at the Knicks, right, Jalen Brunson, 30 points, including, I think, 23 in the second half. Josh Hart hit some big shots, 14, 11 rebounds, 9 assists, almost a triple-double. RJ Barrett with a decent game with 24 points, 3 assists, 3 rebounds. Not a great game necessarily from Mitchell Robinson. He was okay. But Isaiah Hartenstein made a real big difference for the Knicks, right? In terms of getting those offensive rebounds. He had 9 rebounds.
He's a hustle
Um,
guy.
yeah, 4 offensive rebounds, I think. And they all pretty much came in one possession, which was a really crucial possession because again, it was a very close game, and the Knicks kind of needed to pull away.
Right.
Um, if Butler comes back, I mean, you look at the guys that played. Caleb Martin had 22 and 8. Bam, okay, but I feel like you needed more from him
You need
considering
20. You need 20 and 10 from him
yeah,
every
yeah,
night.
considering without Butler, he's probably their best player. Gabe Vincent kind of picked up the slack, like I said, along with Caleb Martin. Max Strus gave him some pretty good minutes. Um, just foul trouble for a lot of these guys. But then once you got to the bench, right, Kyle Lowry didn't really give you a whole lot.
Yep.
Duncan Robinson didn't really give you a whole lot. Haywood Highsmith, who they were kind of forced to bring out, didn't really give him a lot. Cody Zeller, not really much of anything. Um, I had the Knicks winning this series going in.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if Butler plays and he's like semi healthy, it feels like Miami might be the better team. I mean, again, we kind of talked about it with Phoenix against the Clippers, where it's like, you're the Knicks, everybody's playing, Butler's out, Max Strus gets hurt, and like Miami could have won this game. I don't know. Like, it just doesn't feel great for New York. I mean, maybe they just win the series just because they have more guys, but I don't know. I'm starting to not feel great about the Knicks' chances of winning the series. And again, it was a must win, right? Because they needed to win this game. I don't know. I mean, I know you picked the Heat to win the series.
Yeah.
So I mean, how you feeling about the pick? You still feeling like Miami's gonna win,
I, I'm
assuming But
yeah, I'm confident in Miami because I mean if Butler's coming back for game 3, he's gonna go off, guaranteed. I'm sorry. There's no debate. I'm not saying, he's gonna drop like, 40 or something, but it's gonna be enough to get them over the hump, just like in game 1, and he did that limping. I think Kyle Lowry's probably gonna have a bounce back game. Something along those lines. I wouldn't be surprised. How much would y'all say free throws play into a win? The Knicks had like 30 free throw attempts versus the Heat only 17. Free throws are a
I mean,
big deal. I mean, like they can make or break you. But honestly, it depends on how much what deficit we're kind of talking about. So
yeah,
how deep into the hole are you? Are you at the point of no return, or yada yada yada? It just depends. But yeah, free throws are a big factor in general, I think, especially late game and in close games. But
yeah.
even in bigger games, they can definitely get you back in that thing or keep you out of it.
Yeah, I would definitely say it can play into a win. There's a lot of variables though. So you said the Knicks had 30 free throws, Heat only had 17. I mean, it's kind of like what we talked about, with the Lakers, right? Where, I know that there are going to be people that are going to complain about the free throw discrepancy, but again, look at the shot attempts. I mean, in this game, right? I mean, the Heat and the Knicks 3-point attempts were kind of equal, I guess, right? But then you
Shot
also
the
have to
same
look.
percentage pretty much too.
Yeah, but then you have to look at the personnel as well, right? Like who on the Heat is gonna get like a high number of free throws, right? They don't really have a lot of guys that can just get to the line, whenever they want. Jimmy Butler would be that guy, but he wasn't playing. Um, and so like that plays into a factor. It just kind of yeah, Lakers also had 29 versus Warriors 6. Yeah, but then again, you still have to look at the personnel, right? LeBron, Anthony Davis, Dennis Schroeder, Austin Reeves, right? All those guys are guys that can play downhill and get to the basket. I mean, for the Warriors, it's pretty much Steph, sometimes Wiggins, right? But he doesn't play with the ball in his hands a whole lot. And then Jordan Poole, right? Those are pretty much the only guys
Clay
that
sometimes too. I don't know. That can be fishy though.
But even then, like again, he doesn't play downhill. So if he's getting a lot of free throw attempts, it's probably because he's getting fouled, on jump
Mm-hmm.
shot.
Yep.
So yeah, free throws can play into a win. It just kind of depends on the personnel, right? Like, again, with Lakers and Warriors, that's going to be the difference is the Lakers are really good at getting to the free throw line. And that was why, in a previous podcast, I said they don't have to hit a ton of threes in order to win games because they can do it in other ways. They can
Right.
defend, get to the line, all that other kind of stuff. And then with the Knicks, right? I mean, they just had more talent on the floor. I mean,
Yeah.
like, so just in general, right? Like, they're going to get, more free throws. Brunson and Randall, they can play downhill. They're pretty good at getting to the line, right? And the Heat are small, right? And that's another factor, right? In terms of the lack of size, right? Like if you have a bunch of small guys getting matched up against a bunch of big guys, I mean, it's going to be really hard to defend without fouling because that's really all you can do.
Yeah.
Like the only big guy that the Heat put out there is Bam. I guess Cody Zeller, right? But he doesn't play a lot, and he's not the defensive guy. That Bam is. You guys think there'll be any blowouts?
That's
There is.
possible.
It's definitely possible. I mean, there's always a potential for a blowout in a playoff game with the 3-point shooting, right? Like the Heat, it's kind of interesting because going into the playoffs, they were the worst offensive team in the league, but they were able to beat the Bucks. I mean, in addition to some of the injury factors, right? But they were also able to beat Milwaukee because they were knocking down threes like crazy. I mean, in this series, they've been more closer to what they were during the regular season, but against the Bucks, they had a lot of high scoring games where they were scoring like 120, 125, 130. Um, so it all kind of comes down to the 3-point shooting. I mean, I guess in theory the Knicks are a better 3-point shooting team than the Heat. So they could potentially have a game right where if all their threes are going down, right, then they got a chance. But like, look at the 3-point shooting in this game; it was pretty even. Like the Knicks hit 16, and the Heat hit 17. So it kind of comes down to that for the most part. It just kind of comes down to the 3-point shooting. Because that's usually kind of like the reasoning behind a blowout is either like one team is really hot from three, or just maybe the other team is turning the ball over a lot and the other team is getting out in transition. Those are kind of
Yeah.
like that's typically like how you
Those are
get
the
into a blowout.
recipes.
Yeah. Plus the other team usually like wouldn't be shooting that well, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, like if one team's shooting like 40% and then the other team's shooting like 55, right? Then that like I said, those are kind of the recipes for a blowout. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, this series has been kind of interesting because again, it's two lower seeds.
Yeah.
Right, the Heat, it's just been crazy the run they've been on. like I said, I didn't expect them to win this game without Butler, but it was, pretty interesting that it was such a close game even without him. Just because you had so many guys for the Heat step up. I almost kind of feel like I'm back in on the Heat now, just because like
Okay.
they were so bad for most of the season, and it just felt like they were just not very good. And like I said, there were times where I was trying to decide whether or not they were just zombies or maybe they just weren't good. Then we saw them get, whooped in the play-in against the Hawks, and I'm like, yeah, maybe this team is just not good. And then they, have the close game against the Bulls where like, a couple, misses here and there and they would have missed the playoffs. Then they beat the number 1 seed, and now they're going back to Miami tied, with the series tied. So I mean, that's pretty much as good as you can ask for with a Butler injury. So I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of almost at this point leaning towards the Heat now. Just through the first 2 games, it feels like the Heat have been better. Because again, Brunson and Randall were awesome, but Butler didn't play, and it was a very close win where the Heat had a chance to win. They just couldn't hit shots in the fourth.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like, I had the Knicks winning the series, but I'm not really feeling great about it anymore.
Yeah.
But we'll see how this.
I feel you. It was a tough pick because they're both dog fighting teams. They both fight for every point. So I think all these games are pretty much going to be close. For this series, I don't know. In terms of the blowout thing, I don't know. I feel like it is possible, but not too probable, if that makes sense. Just because there's not a lot of guys on here that, their games kind of catapult off of each other that can lead to blowouts. I don't think, not from what I've seen. And I feel like if we're really talking about a blowout, then it'll probably be the Knicks blowing out the Heat at some point. I just feel like RJ, Julius Randle, and Jalen Brunson are more liable to explode than, say Jimmy, Bam, and I don't know who else, because Miami's third option is kind of like scattered all over the place right now, in my opinion. But I feel like that's more, probable to happen if you're the New York Knicks. But I thought this game was interesting. I enjoyed it. I didn't understand some things that the Heat were doing. Like, sometimes you just got to take Kyle Lowry out. I understand that he brings, some sort of offensive prowess and defensive prowess because, he knows how to maneuver. He's been in the game for a long time. But there's just some times where he just doesn't look good. And there's some nights where he looks great. And I feel like that's just the risk that you have to take with him because, you're kind of gambling with him on the court because you don't know what you're going to get. But yeah, shout out the Knicks, though. Like, Jalen Brunson, 30 piece. Julius Randle had some big threes with 25 points, 12 rebounds, 8 assists. That's kind of the Julius Randle that you'd want to see, especially not the one, that was playing in the latter end of the Cleveland series. And then RJ putting up 24 points. I think that's something you also want to see as well. He's kind of proving why he wasn't, in that trade for Donovan Mitchell. And, that's why the Knicks didn't get him. So, I mean, I feel like this is what you want to see if you're a Knicks fan, but you can't, if you're the Knicks, you don't want to take your foot off the gas because the Heat, they're one to watch. They're my dark horse in the East, and Jimmy Butler's a monster. So, I mean, I thought it was a good game, though.
Yeah, I guess to be fair, Randall didn't play in game 1, so that does make a difference.
Right.
What the Heat were able to do, and the Knicks in the first half of game 1 did play better. So I don't know. Maybe I'm not ready to change my pick. I guess I'll stay with my convictions and stick with the Knicks for now. But I don't know. It just didn't feel like a great win. But again, obviously, you take the wins when you can get them, right? I mean, obviously, process is important, but results are also important as well. But you'd like to win with better process, but you'll take it, right? Because it is the playoffs, and ultimately, you got to get wins. The first to 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess we got to look. I guess we got to look a little bit ahead and backwards at the same time. So, excuse us, this probably is going to be a little jumbled or kind of just weird to talk about. But, I guess looking ahead, we do have game 2 today at 8 o'clock p.m., 76ers, Celtics. And then I guess, to go backwards, game 1 happened on Monday. And this was a big surprise. And first, before we do talk about the 76ers, there's one guy that we do have to shout out. We'll shout him out on the episode. Unfortunately for me, it's, Joel Embiid. He's the MVP. It was announced today. So, shout out MVBead. That's your nickname for him. So, the league got what they wanted. Embiid's the MVP. So, I mean, there's not much to say there. I don't think he's the MVP. I think it should be Jokic, but, that's just my opinion.
That was my pick ultimately for MVP. It was primarily just because it felt like Denver down the stretch was just kind of coasting. I know Jokic missed some time, and Embiid had those performances. It was a really close race for a while. It just felt like after Embiid had those, late regular season game performances, he was gonna pull it out. And I
Yeah,
mean, at the end of the day, I feel like it feels kind of right when you think like the last few years, right? Giannis got two, Jokic got two, and Embiid's got one, and it feels like that kind of makes sense. I mean, maybe you can say Embiid should add two, Jokic could add one, but regardless, all three of those guys I think were more than deserving of getting at least one.
sure. It was
So,
close. It wasn't like it was like a landslide victory, I don't think. But, you know.
and then I guess like you said, I guess we can go back to the Philly Boston game, right?
Hmm.
So, like you said, that one was definitely a surprise. With the Sixers stealing game one, 119 to 115. Um, I didn't give them a great shot, but I gave them a chance. But it all was, coming down to, James Harden,
Hmm.
right? Tyrese Maxey, right? Those guys. And James Harden put up a throwback vintage James Harden performance, 45 points,
Yeah, he was
six assists,
cooking.
two steals, 7 of 14 from three, including a
Cooking.
big victory late in the game over Al Horford. Tyrese Maxey, 26, 2 of 9 from three, but 10 of 24, right? Got to the basket a lot, hit some, big shots. Paul Reed, another guy, that we shouted out, who closed out that Brooklyn series in place of Embiid, 10 points, 13 rebounds, two late game trips to the line, right? Where he knocked down 4 free throws, right? To kind of seal the game. That was huge, right? From a young player where this is kind of like his first big playoff experience. Tobias Harris, right? 18 and 5. Just a well-rounded effort. 17 from DeAnthony Melton. This was what you needed if you were Philly. Where you needed a lot of guys to step up without Joel Embiid in order to pull off the win. And then we look at Boston, just a really disappointing, just really bad game one performance. It felt like they might be able to like close it out because Philly was up for a while. Um, Boston led early, Philly came back, and then Boston took the lead late. Thought they might close it out, but then they just kind of deflated. What role does PJ Tucker play? Man's played 37 minutes and had zero. It's the defense. It's the
Yeah,
defense.
he's a big factor for them because
Yeah,
it doesn't like he can space the floor. I know, like you pointed out that he has 0 points, but he spaces the floor because he is a great corner shooter. But he kind of just drags people away. But also, it's that defense because he's like what, a 6'7" center basically. Yeah,
6'5".
6'5" center. So like he's just down there. He's got the upper body strength and the defensive prowess. He hangs with the big guys. You should watch some of his highlights or whatever, watch an in-depth video or breakdown on him. He's not that bad. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on PJ. I don't mind his game. I actually like it.
I mean, he's an older player, obviously, so he's not quite the same.
Right.
Yeah, he brings defense. He brings toughness. He brings great. A really good screen setter, like you said, good for offensive rebounds, good for corner threes, right? Just big hustle plays. You need a guy like that on your team, right? Because again, with Harden, Maxey, Tobias Harris, Embiid when he's healthy, right? You don't really need PJ Tucker to score. You just need him to do the little things. That's why again, even with 0 points and 5 rebounds, he still finished with a positive plus minus, right?
Because
Because
he's doing all the intangible stuff. I mean, that's just how basketball goes. There's some guys who are scorers. There's some guys who are, tough guys. There's some guys who are defensive guys, hustle guys, even locker room guys. It doesn't matter. There's a role for everybody. It's just, depends on how you look at it. So,
but going back to Boston,
yeah.
pretty disappointing, pretty bad game
Oh,
one.
yeah.
My opinion. Tatum, I thought, played really well, 39 and 11, 14 of 25. Brown was awesome, 8 of 10, 23 points. The problem was it just felt like they couldn't get the ball to those guys down the stretch. It was a
Yep.
lot of smart offense.
Which is not
Um,
what you want if you're a Boston fan.
Not what you want if you're Boston, right? Even though he had 12 points, 7 assists, he did make some big buckets late. He also had 6 turnovers, right, including a costly one at the end of the game where Boston couldn't get a shot off. Brogdon, 20 off the bench. But this is kind of like a weird concern where it feels like the last few games Boston just hasn't been that great. They closed out the series against Atlanta, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it went 6, longer than we thought. I know one game they lost on a ridiculous Trae Young three, but I don't know. It hasn't looked great. But again, like we talked about it. It's a wide open league right now. Every team's got its weakness, and again, Boston's weakness at times is the turnovers, right? That was an issue last year.
Yeah.
Right. And, sometimes late in the game, like things just kind of discombobulate. I guess you could factor in some coaching issues, but again, like, I mean, I don't feel like the coach is the biggest reason for why they had 16 turnovers as a team, right? I mean, some of that I think was just miscommunication. And again, just they should have put the ball in Tatum and Brown's hands late in the game. It shouldn't have been in Marcus Smart's hands. I get that he's the point guard. I get that, he's an improved passer, playmaker, but I wanted in those guys' hands late in the game.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't think this is necessarily like a cause for concern in terms of
Mm-mm.
losing this
It's
game.
one
If you're
game.
Boston,
One game.
it's one game. Harden was awesome, right? Again, if he can do that 4 out of 7 times, right, then
Then
Boston's
you're
going to lose
scared.
anyway. Exactly. Yeah, it took one of James Harden's best playoff performances ever, to beat Boston, by a few points. So if you're
Literally
Boston,
4.
yeah, exactly. If you're Boston, you don't feel great about dropping game one at home. But again, it's a long series. Right? It's one game, so you have a chance to bounce back and make a statement next game. It just kind of depends, right? Because again, if you lose game two, right, then it's cause for concern, right? If Embiid possibly comes back, I don't know if he will, considering they said his knee injury wasn't great. So I don't know if Embiid's gonna come back,
Right.
but regardless, Boston I think needs to win game two, right? If you lose game two, the series isn't necessarily over, but it's kind of panic time because it's like, oh my gosh, we just lost back-to-back games without their best player.
Right.
Uh, so I don't know. I feel like Boston should win game two. Harden was hot, but I mean, again, is he going to have that performance again?
He can't keep it
Maybe.
up. I'm sorry. Like for me, I have the Celtics winning this series. Like I said, it's one game for me. Honestly, Boston really just sold this game entirely. They had it at one point, but they just don't know how to take care of the ball sometimes. Seems like there's a lack of discipline on this squad because if you look around at the team stats, they shot better overall from the field than Philly did. You know, more rebounds, more assists. But it's just the turnovers. That's the thing that's rough for them. So, I think if they can just lock in, take care of the ball, I don't think there's going to be an issue. But, this was without Embiid. I think that's the scariest thing is that it was without Embiid. I think that's the main topic.
Derek White. So
Yeah.
he needs to do the right thing in order for, them to probably pull it out. Because again, like it's just kind of an interesting dichotomy with their guards, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
again, Marcus Smart, it feels like Derek White on as a whole has been better this season than Marcus Smart. And I know he's, been a guy that Boston, has kind of, developed and, turned into a pretty solid player. But I don't know. But again, it's unfortunate because you didn't get a good Derek White game tonight. You lost
Right.
by 4. But again, don't panic if you're Boston. It's a bad loss, but it's not a game series loss, right?
No,
It's
it's game
better to
one.
have. Yeah, it's better for this to be in game one than it would be if it was like game 6.
It's better to come out flat than to go out flat. I'm just saying.
So I mean, but this should not happen again. Your
No,
boss
it can't.
to lock it better. You got to make some adjustments, I think, in terms of what you can do with Harden, because I don't know, but just in general, hats off to Harden because he had a great performance. It's just the big thing is can he do it again? I don't think he needs to score 45 again, but again, without Embiid, you're gonna need a pretty big performance out of him because pretty much without Embiid, he's probably their best player. And again, he's gonna have the ball in his hands a lot, right? So, and again, in this game, the other factor was he was able to get to the basket, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was 7 of 14 from 3, but he also was 17 of 30 from the field. And part of that was he had some big drives to the basket late, some floaters, shots that he wasn't making against Brooklyn. Again, if you can get a really good version of James Harden, the version that we saw before he got hurt, Philly does have a chance.
Right.
I think they have a chance to beat Boston, but it just depends. If you don't get that version of Harden, you're not going to win.
Yeah. It simply comes down to that. And like I said, or like we said, they do play game 2 today. And that would be May 3rd. So, they're going to play today, 8 p.m. game. That's going to be a wild one. It's all up in the air because, without Embiid, I feel like the Celtics should win, but, they did literally just lose. So, it's all up in the air. Y'all think no CP3 will impact the Suns?
So we'll get into that game, I guess,
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
Let's recap that. So we'll go into game 2. of
Ugh,
Phoenix, Denver. Obviously, Denver pulls out the win, 97-87. Looking
ugly.
at Denver, Jokic, your pick for MVP. Great game, 39 points, 16 rebounds,
Yep.
5 assists, um, 17 to 30 from the field. Right, was the best player on the floor in my opinion. Aaron Gordon chipped in with 16 points. Jamal Murray had, a bad game, in my opinion, at least offensively. Had some
Hmm.
decent moments in terms of playmaking and assists, getting the ball to Jokic, but scoring wise, right, definitely a big time regression.
Oh yeah,
Um,
big time.
Good game, great game from Caldwell Pope. Right, this was why I thought this was a great pickup going into the season. He's a guy that was on a championship Laker team, was a starting guard, really good 3-and-D guy. I, initially was, up and down with him on the Lakers, but I grew to really like him. And I think he was a great pickup for Denver. Bruce
Yeah.
Brown gave him some solid minutes. Jeff Green, Christian Brown, Michael Porter Jr. pretty quiet, but again, right, you got a huge game from Jokic. And then moving on to the Suns, as we saw in the chat, right, Durant 24 points, but 10 of 27, 2 of 12 from three. Not a great performance from him. Ayton 14 points, 8 rebounds, 5 fouls, 4 turnovers. Got cooked by Jokic, so not a great performance from him. Booker was really good, 35, 6 and 5, 14 of 29, 4 of 8. But after that, not much else. Chris Paul was pretty quiet, 8, 5, and 6. Obviously got hurt in the third quarter. We'll talk about that in a minute. But this was kind of my concern for Phoenix, and this is why I was really 50-50 on this series.
Okay.
In my mind, like, my head was leaning towards Denver, but heart was leaning towards Phoenix, not because I love Phoenix, but more so just like I just was like, Denver's got more depth. Phoenix
Okay.
has more top line talent, but just in general, this was not a great game from Phoenix. I thought defensively they made some really good adjustments because they had the lead for a while. But then it just felt like with that defense, they just couldn't score in the fourth. They were taking some really difficult shots. And again, I think the Chris Paul injury also was an impact because you didn't have another playmaker passer. And yeah, I think it's a big impact because, reportedly he's going to be out at least for the next couple of games.
Right.
Um, you have a team that already doesn't have much depth, right? And, you lose one of your starters. So, I mean, in my opinion, I think this is going to be really tough for Phoenix to win the series because, I mean, we saw them put out, Cameron Payne, right? He was pretty awful. Damian Lee, they put out, he was pretty awful. Then they tried Booker at point guard, and he just ran out of gas. I mean, I think it's going to be really tough for Phoenix to win this series without Chris Paul because, again, no depth, and now you have even less.
Hmm.
But so game 3 to me is a must win. If they
Okay.
don't win game 3, I think that this series is done because they are not going to come back down 3-0.
Yeah.
No team has ever done that before, and you're not going to be able to do that with just literally 4 guys.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm not necessarily going to say it's over just yet. Sorry I'm late. Any word on Butler's injury? He didn't play in game 2. My guess is he's probably going to play game 3.
He's going to.
I think they kept him out because I think they were kind of hoping maybe we have a chance to steal game 2.
They
And if we
did too. They really had a chance.
Yeah, exactly. And if we don't, we have a chance, we're just going to go back to Miami with the series tied. So I think it was probably the right decision because you got the first win that you needed. So I think he'll play in game 3, but they haven't said anything yet. So
Yeah.
we don't know yet. But, going back to Phoenix, yeah, if Chris Paul can't play, which it sounds like he's not going to play, I don't know if Phoenix is going to be able to win the series because I think they need him. Especially, to help with those second units, because they take him out early, to play with the second unit. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to say it's done because you never know. Durant and Booker could have huge performances, but I mean, it's going to be really, really, really tough. I mean, they have to win this next game. If they don't win game 3, it's done.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I'm not worried. I'm gonna stand on my pick. I have them going to the finals. I think this was just a bad game from KD in particular. 44 minutes, 24 points, 3 assists, 8 rebounds. That's not enough from Durant, especially when you are the number 2 guy on this team. On a thin roster, you've got to play better than that. You've got to match Booker. You've got to literally, match his stats almost like word for word, or, stat for stat, I feel like. But that's a tough ask, considering, all the things that all the Suns' woes, and then Chris Paul going out, I think that just hurt their morale and deflated the squad. So I think that's what was going on here. Couldn't really find anything to go in from 3, which is unfortunate. But even the Nuggets, they didn't really shoot that well from 3 either. So
Just got to the
Um,
bat.
yeah, they were just attacking the basket, and Aiton's got to be a lot better, in my opinion. You got to put a body on him, stop him, hinder him, something, just do something, because I mean, he's just using you as a punching bag at that point. But with the Suns, I think Kevin Durant needs to step up. Simple as that. And I think he will at home. I need to see Game 3. If I see Game 3, and the Suns come out flat, then I'll be worried. Right now, I'm not worried because Phoenix can easily, win back-to-back games. I don't think that's a too tall of an ask for them. But yeah, it's this road stuff and the defense. But now that Chris Paul's out, that is a concern because who are you going to put at the one? Maybe it was nerves for those guys who came in, but it just did not look good from them at the one. So, it might have to look at Booker to facilitate, but I feel like but I feel like, if Jamal Murray has another game like that, you can get away with winning one, or, the next two or whatever. Because, if Jamal Murray's not playing well and maybe Jokic scores like, 10 or 12 less points, then you could probably squeeze a win out of this. So we'll see.
Just worried. I just would be, worried if I'm Phoenix because, again, you got, basically nothing out of
I
Jamal Murray
know.
Jr., and they still won by 10 points. I mean, it was a back and forth game. It was kind of just begging for, somebody on Phoenix to be able to kind of close it out. It just felt like they were gassed. They were taking a lot of difficult shots. They're playing a lot with the ball in their hands. And again, it's not a high volume 3-point shooting team. They
No.
took threes, which is a decent amount. But again, we know, right? They're more so mid-range guys. So, I mean, Durant was 2 for 12. Obviously, we know he's a great 3-point shooter. I think he will have a better game 3. It just kind of comes down to, again, they need somebody else to step up because I don't think you're going to be able to have just Durant and Booker get you 4 out of 7 because that's the problem. You're going to have to win 4 out of 5. And I don't think you can have Durant and Booker score 60 every game and they still win to win 4 out of 5. You're going to need somebody, some role player to step up. And if they can get that guy to step up, then they have a chance.
Yeah.
It's just, who's it going to be? I mean, like, that's kind of the question here. Is it going to be, right? I mean, maybe you get a better game out of Ayton. But who else, right? I mean, Cameron Payne, maybe, but nobody. I don't think Phoenix really trusts him like that. Damian Lee, maybe he steps in and knocks, down a couple of big shots. Torrey Craig, right? He started, for Phoenix in the last series, right? But obviously he's not starting in this series because you need a Kogi to guard Jamal Murray. So I don't know. I think it's going to be really tough without Chris Paul. Like you said, I think they still have a chance, but it all comes down to this next game. If they lose the next game, it's done.
Yeah. When's Game 3?
I think they have quite a few days off. It might not be until I think it's Friday.
Okay. Because I know Game 4 is what, Sunday?
Game 4 for what?
For the Phoenix Nuggets one.
So I think Game 3, I think is Friday.
Okay.
So 4 would probably be like, I guess what, like that next Sunday, Monday?
Yeah, Sunday, May 7th. Well, they're saying Game 4 is Sunday, May 7th, so I don't know. This is weird.
Okay,
I was trying to see, when the next game is, but that's weird. Huh.
Okay, yeah. So game 3 I think is Friday. Game 4 is Sunday. So game 3 is this Friday. So they get like 3 days off.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious to see how this series goes, but I'm not worried right now.
Yeah. With 3 days off, they're gonna get some more rest. You get time to make adjustments. It's just the concern is, obviously they're not necessarily gonna stop Jokic, but it's just kind of concerning that again you got a really bad, really awful offensive performance from, 2 of Denver's 3 best players, and they still won.
Yeah.
You just didn't get anything, from their guys either for the most part. So it's a concern. Like you said, I think they still have a chance to win the series. Going in, I picked Phoenix to win the series, but it was by a hair. Just because I was just concerned about the lack of depth.
I get it 100%. But
yeah,
I still can't. I can't, not pick the team with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker on it. Simply just because, of who they are, talent wise.
I think Kevin Durant will be better.
He's going to be better at home.
I think they'll make adjustments, get him some easier looks. And I think he'll just knock down, just some of those shots, that he was struggling to make. But he's going to have to, because if he doesn't, then the series is done.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm expecting him to have a better performance. I think he will.
Yeah.
It's just tough, because again, I mean, and it's just odd, right? Because you look at Boston. He struggled against Boston last year, but I don't think this Denver team is as good defensively as Boston. I
No.
think they have, some solid athletes, but I don't think they have the same defenders. Certainly
Mm-mm.
not the same level of rim protection.
No, not at
Just
all. Not nearly.
yeah, so it's just kind of bizarre to see him, kind of struggling against the Denver defense. He had 31 in game 1, but he also had like 7 turnovers. But again, in general, this is what happens when you don't have a lot of depth. But I think he'll be better in game 3. I feel like they will win game 3 at home. Just don't know if they're going to win game 3 and 4. They need to win both.
I think
They
they'll
don't
win
win.
both. I think they will, just due to the fact that it's Katie. And I know that's kind of glazing, but I think he's
they're
gonna
your
come
pick.
out of there and make it a statement. And
Yeah.
they're the pick to go. They're my pick to go to the finals. So I believe in it. And I'm gonna stand on it.
So I guess looking ahead, I suppose to the games, the next games coming up, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
If we look at the schedule ahead, right? So like you said, we have Philly Boston, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So we both feel like Boston's probably
Yeah.
gonna win. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of agree with that because again, at home, I think they had a really bad game 1.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I just think in general they're gonna be better and they're gonna need to be better.
For sure.
Right. And then I guess Thursday we can look at Lakers Warriors game 2. Um, that's Thursday, right?
Warriors are winning that one.
I think the Warriors will win that one.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to lose both games at home. If they
No.
lose both games at home, I think that they're probably going to lose the series because I don't see them being able to win.
You don't think 76ers should keep Doc? No.
Well,
Okay. Okay. Let me back that up. That was harsh. That was rude. If they come up short this season, no, they don't need to keep him. He doesn't have that great of a coaching history. He had the Boston titles, but outside of that, not too much. I don't really know. Like, I just don't think he's that good of a coach. He tends to get outcoached, especially in late game situations, specifically in the playoffs. So, it wouldn't surprise me if Doc is out of there next year if they come up short. But what's your thoughts on that?
yeah, I mean, I think he did a decent job in game 1.
Yeah.
Just because again, you're shorthanded without your best player, so I think you do have to give credit to the players and the coach. I feel like I'm kind of on your side where I feel like if they come up short, then yeah, he might be gone.
Right.
But if they do make it past Boston, I think they'll probably keep him. So I think it kind of comes down to this series where, if they lose to Boston, right, then that's kind of what I guess 3 straight postseasons, right, where they came up short.
Yep.
Right, because I think because they lost, because they're playing against Boston this season. Last season they lost. Who was it to? They lost to who was it? Who did Philly lose to last year?
Last season?
It was Miami. They lost to Miami last year.
Yeah, and then it was
Embiid got hurt, and then the year before it was Atlanta.
Yeah, and then don't forget about the Toronto thing.
Yeah, but I don't think Rivers coached back then.
No, he didn't. But still they did lose.
Yeah, so I mean, the I guess the Atlanta postseason loss was bad.
Yeah.
In my opinion, that was just a collapse because they had multiple huge leads in some of those games.
Yeah, the
Miami
infamous Simmons one.
Yeah, the Miami one, I'll cut him a little slack only because I think Embiid missed a couple of games, because he was hurt, and I think that makes a difference.
Yeah.
And then this one, I mean, Boston, I feel like is a better team, but at the same time, again, like Philly just won game 1, so I think it all comes down to this series. If they win this series, I think they'll keep him. If they come up short, then he's probably gone. But then it also depends, right? Because we've heard so many rumors about Harden maybe going to Houston. So I feel like a lot is on the line for Philly here, right? Like,
Yeah.
If they come up short against Boston, I think we could see some big changes. But if they, somehow beat Boston, which I think they have a chance to, because again, like, even though I didn't give them a great chance, at this point, like, the league is so wide open where I think you have to give Philly a chance. I think you do have to respect Philly's ability to win 4 out of 7 games. I think they have a shot.
Right.
I don't think they're going to win this series, but I'm not giving them a 0% chance. I think they absolutely have a chance. So
Yeah, it's just a low one for me.
If they beat Boston, I think he stays. If they lose, then he's probably gone.
Yeah.
But yeah, like we said, looking ahead, I think the Warriors will bounce back and win game 2. The only concern is that in game 1, they shot pretty well from 3, and they still lost.
Right.
So that's, not exactly great if you're Golden State. I mean, they made what I think a franchise record,
Mm-hmm.
uh, uh, postseason record. I think for threes, it was what was it like 21 or something like
I
that? It was
think it
some
was 21. Yeah.
yeah, it was some ridiculous number. I mean,
Yep.
like and but again, then you also have to factor in maybe the free throw discrepancy will be a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Game two, right? Because again, the Lakers should get more free throws than Golden State just about every game. But there's going to be some games where it'll be a little bit closer. Um, just based off of just shot selection, things like transition defense, just whatever, right? But then you could also factor in, hey, the Lakers shot like garbage from three in game one. Maybe they shoot better in game two, but I think Golden State will win game two. They
Yeah.
have to.
I agree
I
with that 100%.
think they have to. I think they're going to treat
Especially
game
at home. Yeah.
yeah, and just in general, the Lakers, it feels like they're a team where they win one game and then kind of take their foot off the gas in the next game. And I think they're going to be like, we did our job in game one. We're at the worst
They
case
don't care.
scenario. Yeah, worst case scenario, go back home with a split. So they did what they needed to do.
And they're
in
a
my
confident home team. So I don't think that's I don't think this game does matter a lot, but they're not going to be, up in the rafters if they lose this next one.
I don't think they're super concerned just yet. And then I guess, we'll go up to like, I guess, end of the week, right? So
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Um, I guess no, we'll stop at Friday because we don't know about the availability.
Yeah. Right.
We'll look at Friday because we'll cover those games. In our actual podcast.
Yep.
Once they happen, right? Friday will be game 3, I guess. Boston, Philly.
Mm-hmm.
To see what happens with Embiid because
We need to see game 2.
Because again, like it sounded like they were saying his injury was bad, and worse than what was initially reported. So that's not a good sign.
Right.
So I feel like I don't know. I don't want to say he's not going to play at all this series, but
I think he probably won't play till like game 3, maybe 4.
Yeah, the way it was framed feels like he'll probably miss at least the first couple of games.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't want to look too far ahead because I just need to know if he plays. Because if he's not going to play at all, then I don't think Philly will win at all.
Right.
Because I don't think they're going to win 4 out of 7 in time without Joel Embiid. I think that would be a monumental task to overcome. I don't think they can do that, and that's
asking so much of Harden too.
Holy. That's not a knock on Philly. I mean, in general, you're not going to win a playoff series with your best player out the whole series. I mean, that's just probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then as I said, Friday is Phoenix Suns Nuggets game 3, or excuse me, game 2.
No, it's game 3.
No, I think it's game. Oh yeah, it is game 3.
Yeah.
I thought I said game 3. My bad.
No, you said game 2 and then, or you said game 3 then game 2.
My bad.
You're good. You're good.
Yeah.
L in the chat.
Yeah, it's that East Coast fatigue.
Yeah.
I do feel like Phoenix will probably win game 3. I just think you're going to see a level of desperation from those guys. I think they did make some good adjustments defensively. It all just comes down to shot making, I think. And I think you'll get a better game from Durant. I think at home you'll get at least one guy off the bench, who will play better. So I think Phoenix will win game 3. And we'll probably go about as far as that. I think.
Yeah. I think the same. I think it's going to be a Durant legacy game for sure at home. They've got a lot to prove. They need to show that they're, not a team that can be walked over like that. Sure, they can probably be walked over like that on the road, but at home they can't go out sad like that. Even though we did see it happen in the Clippers series, I think once. So, that is a concern. But at the same time, me as an individual, I'm not worried about it because I'm standing on my pick. And I still have them going to the finals just because of who they have. And I think they'll come out and win this game and show the NBA they're not a joke of a team, and they've still got it. So that, I guess that about wraps it up, right? I mean, we've covered everything that's happened in between the time that we last uploaded and pretty much today, and then we looked forward a little bit. So I hope you guys all enjoyed this podcast live edition of our podcast. We plan on doing this a lot more, especially with the playoffs heating up more and more as teams are on the brink of elimination. Be sure to watch out for our noties. We'll be going live when teams are on the brink, and then obviously when series are in their game 1, just so we can give our initial thoughts and whatnot and feel out what the series is going to look like. But without further ado, don't forget to like and subscribe. That helps us out a huge amount. We'd love to see the support. And shout out everyone who showed love on our YouTube short. You know, that was our highest viewed video. And once again, thank you, WPod. Thank you. We appreciate all the support, no matter who it is. But yeah, once again, don't forget to like and subscribe. Helps us out a whole bunch. Sorry for the stutter. Tired. 1:46 a.m. East Coast time. We're tired. But yeah, with that, we're gonna head on out. Thank you, everyone.